Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about the new St Croix Legend X2 line of rods. This is going to be a bit of an overview of the line, not the particular rod. And by the way, you probably arrived at this particular video because of my provocative, if not clickbaity, thumbnail that says the I Am Rich rods. Okay, so let me talk about that real quick. First, I want to say that there's nothing in any of the St. Croix literature, or I've heard from anybody that these rods are for rich people. Okay, that's just me being a bit flippant, okay? And by the way, I have nothing against wealthy people. As a matter of fact, I've spent my entire life trying to earn enough money, save and invest that money so that I can live a pretty nice lifestyle in my old age, which I'm getting very close to being there. Nonetheless, I do want to talk to you where that comes from and talk about it a little bit, because these rods are expensive. Okay, they're they're over $600. So they're not for everybody. The I Am Rich came from an app in the early days of the App Store. You probably know that I'm a iPhone developer, that I have an app in the App Store called My Eyes Only. It's a password manager app, but you can keep all kinds of cool stuff in there. Secure and safe. You can sync between multiple devices. So if you're an iPhone user, iPad user, or have a Mac, go ahead and get that app, download it, set it up, see if you like it. And if you like it, please buy a subscription, because that money funds, frankly, my life, my family, and it allows me to do this kind of stuff. So if you can, please give that a shot and take a look at it. This came from an app in the early days of the App Store back in 2008. Apple had pricing tiers from 99 cents all the way up to $999 as a choice you could do for when you downloaded the app and you paid for that app. So somebody created an app and put it in the App Store, and they put $999 as a price tag. And people actually downloaded it. Now, apparently a few kids downloaded it, and Apple pulled that app from the App Store. But here's the point. The point was, maybe jokingly, but saying, hey, this app is for the rich people. The app's name was I Am Rich. And when you downloaded it, all it did is you pushed the big red button it had, and it might have made a noise, or maybe it said I Am Rich. But the point is that at the time it was sort of like an app that you can show off your wealth. And we still do that today in many different ways. I don't care what you say, but think of the Bass Cat Jaguar. Okay, you put a 500R on that particular boat, and it'll cost $160,000, $180,000. What is that telling you? I got the money to buy that boat. Oh, and then what do? They buy the biggest diesel pickup truck and four-wheel drive they can, lift it, and they say, look at what I got. I got this, and I got that boat. And by the way, just so you know, back to my 5-acre ranch or whatever, I have a big shed that I put that in, and I never have to unhook it. Okay, nothing wrong with that. Boy, I'd love to be able to do that. Well, never will, but I'd love to be able to do that. And so if you're going to do all that, you might as well go get yourself the I Am Rich rod, okay? The high-end rod from St. Croix that costs over $600, that you can put in that boat and go fishing with. Okay, again, I'm smiling here. I'm being a little flippant, if you will, but they are expensive, and you probably have to have a certain size pocketbook to really, in a sense, buy these rods. But let me go into some of the reasons why this does cost so much. Let's talk about the rod itself, and let's start with the blank. The blank is now made of SCVII. That's the 7th level, the highest level from St. Croix. The key component of SCVII is the fact that it uses graphene. Graphene's been around for at least 20 years. It's not new to the world of technology, but this is the first time St. Croix has used it in one of its rods. They're doing it because of the structure of graphene is very interesting. It combines together and makes a super strong lattice. It makes a really strong lattice that is stronger than steel and higher tensile strength than diamond. If you can measure that. I don't know how that gets measured, but that's one of the characteristics of this particular material. It can be 1 molecule thin. I have no idea if I can even hold on to something that's 1 molecule thin. I have no idea. But they are using this technology in this rod, and they're using it for strength, probably, mostly, but also sensitivity and lightness. We're just adding to the lightness and the strength. They're trying to do what they can to make these high-end rods amazing. And I think, my take is the strength is really important to it because they have a 15-year warranty on these rods, okay? That's amazing. And the warranty is transferable, meaning I have this rod now, I can sell it to somebody in 10 years, and they still have 5 years of warranty on it. So that's amazing. How do you claim a warranty if you need to? And I've had to do it in the past when I high stick lightweight bass, when you're lifting a fish in the boat, which you're not supposed to do, and I lift it in, that rod is bending, and it just bends too much and snaps. You get it at such a high angle, it's really stupid that you do that. Anyway, I've done it. You go to their website, and they have a page, and you take some pictures. You take a picture of the model number, you take a picture of the serial number, and you take a picture of the brake. You upload those photos, you tell them what happened. I broke it. I told them every time, look, I broke it. You submit it. Day later, a couple days later, they will contact you and they will say, hey, what do you want to do here? And you have two options, right? You can just replace it. For me and the Legend tournaments, it was a $60 replacement fee. That's pretty good. They will take care of you if you break this, or if the person you sold it to broke it, or if the person that person sold it to broke it. So it's pretty cool, right? 15-year warranty. Keep that in mind. The next thing I want to talk about are the guides. These are titanium with Torzite ring material. So titanium obviously is super light, super strong, and very flexible, doesn't break, okay? So when you're gonna do a high-end rod, you might as well get the high-end rod guides with the high-end Torzite rings. Of course, Torzite is incredible, harder and smoother than all the other materials, and that allows you these things to last longer as well, especially if you're using braided line. If you notice here how sharp the color is, it looks like titanium, which is a bit of a off silver, almost a gunmetal. You've seen titanium before, and here they are, super light. And by the way, these titanium guides are one of the reasons why these rods are so expensive. These guides are very, very expensive, so that adds a lot of cost to these rods. Next up I want to talk about is the reel seat here. These reel seats are carbon material. So carbon, again, is stronger, lighter, and more sensitive than, let's say, nylon reel seats. And I love it because St Croix is making their own. These are St Croix branded. I think that's fantastic. In this case, they decided to cover the reel seat with a bit of a sheen, so it looks really sharp. And if you really look at it, it looks pretty sweet how you got the dark grays, you got the silver, if you're titanium color, and then you got the black seat. And here's the reel seat nut, which is machined aluminum. Again, it fits right in. It's got the aluminum sheen color, if you will, and it's got some black mixed in. I don't know how they do that, but nonetheless, that makes this rod look really, really super and really excellent. Also, you'll see here they're split cork handles, and it uses Trigon technology. You can see that right there. You'll see that it looks like a bit of a triangle. That's because when you hold on to it, especially up here, if you hold on to it, a bit of a triangle, it's more comfortable and it's less fatiguing. Something they introduced a couple years ago, and now they're moving this up into their high-end rods as well. But in this case, they're using it in a high-end cork. So this is very high-end cork as well. And if you notice, you'll see a bit of a different colored cork, especially right here on this trigger handle. By the way, the trigger handle is something else that they've also brought forward from the physics line. That obviously people are liking it because they decided to add this feature here. But this cork is a composite, so it's it's ground up high-end cork. It's got some material mixed with it, and then of course it's fused together in a way that makes this stronger than actual cork, and that's why they got it on the end cap. As you can see, they'll have it on the end cap. They have it right here. It'll take a lot of wear and tear when you're casting. The same here for, in a sense, the trailing edge here. It's also made of that material to keep it strong, and right up here they added it there too. Of course, in the spinning rod I was showing you a second ago, the same thing. Trigger down here and the leading edge. So they've got this design so this rod will last 15 years before it breaks down, and so that's what they're after. They don't want to have to do warranty replacements. They want you to keep the rod forever, and they don't want you to have a broken rod. So that's what they're up to with this new technology. And lastly, one of the things that St Croix did here is they chose not to put a bait keeper on the rod, either here or back here, and they decided to send along a Fuji Easy Keeper. Plastic keepers you put where you want on the rod. I'm not so sure about this. I understand other rod companies are doing it, but I don't understand it. I don't get it. To me, I think what they did with the physics was the right answer. They put a keeper here and they put a keeper there for the spinning rods. And on the bait casters, they just put some up here. And I like the keepers that you can actually don't have to unhook the plastic bait to hook it through the loop. So I hope that maybe in the future they'll rethink what they're doing. I don't know what happened. I think they just punted. They didn't know what to do. Okay, I don't know. I wasn't there. I would have said go with dual keepers if you had to, or let's invent something new here. Let's come up with something new. Now I know a lot of people now are actually hooking their baits up to their reels. Certain reels can actually have bait keeper parts of the reel, so maybe it's a moot point. So maybe people who are going to buy these high-end rods are going to buy those reels and keep it all working together. I'm certainly going to try that out, so we'll see how that plays out, because I don't think I'm going to put this plastic on there. I don't know. Plastic will be beaten up in the sun. It'll break exactly when you don't want to. Okay, so there's a criticism so far. And to put this all together, this rod is definitely a lighter feeling rod. The tip feels lighter. This is a 7'3" spinning rod. I have these in the Legend tournament. They're not exactly light in the tip, but this feels to me a bit lighter. I'll have to get a reel on here because that'll change the balance, right? And I'll talk about all that in detail when I do DMRVP reviews of both these rods. That's description, meaning, relevance, value, and purpose. And it's a great way to make an assessment of a rod, and especially a rod in this price category. I'm really looking forward to this. I bought a rod for jigs, and I want a really light, tip up type rod for my jig fishing, which is mostly football jigs out here in the West. So I can't wait to get this on the water. And this particular rod I'm going to probably use for drop shotting. I always have a drop shot rod sitting around, and so got to have one, and I want one again that's very light and very sensitive and all that. And if you've watched any of my videos, what I think about sensitivity is a lot different than a lot of people. But I do know that the lightness of this rod, and yes, the sensitivity, will help me detect a fish on when I'm slacklining, which I almost always do when I'm fishing bottom bouncing baits. It's always about the slack line. So anytime I can have a lighter tip rod with a little bit more sensitivity, that means I'll be able to detect that fish. And one last thing I need to explain here is that St Croix has been watching some of my rod reviews, watching some of my fishing catches, and I'm using their rods, and I'm always talking about my rods, my reels, my baits, and I'm always mentioning St Croix rods. So they've noticed that, and they're working with me right now, and I really appreciate that. They gave me a pretty decent and substantial discounts for these and a couple other rods I have to give these really deep reviews. And like I said, I really appreciate that. It's something they didn't have to do, and I think it's awesome. Will that change how I look at things? Not at all, because I chose St Croix over 2 years ago. And you've watched my videos, some of the reasons. One, they build great rods. Okay, they're world-class rods without a question. They are made in Wisconsin, at least the high-end ones are. The company is based in Wisconsin. That was my home state. So I'm doing what I can now just to help the people of my state that gave me a great education in my first 22 years of my life. I'm very thankful for that. So this is my small way of hopefully driving some customers to St Croix. And ultimately, look, I've used it to catch a lot of fish, big fish. I've used the win tournament, these rods, these St Croix rods to win tournaments. Why would I stop doing that? I spent all this time. I know the actions and the powers, and I know what rod to use when and where, so I'm not going to change. This is it. So no, I'm not going to be a shill for St Croix. But other than that, just getting these in my hands, I'm quite happy. They're very light. I can't tell how they're going to cast yet. I haven't had them in the water, but I can tell they feel light. Anyway, thank you everybody for taking the time to watch this video about the new Legend X2 rods. More is coming, by the way, on these rods. And look, be free out there. We're Americans. We deserve to be free.